in terms of the work that I do with anxiety, so much of what I teach my people is to approach, right? Something scares you. Let's check it out. Let's see if this is the thing that kills you. Because if it's not, you're going to learn about your resilience. You're going to learn about what you can tolerate. And if it kills you, it doesn't matter because you're dead. You're dead. It's over, right? So let's go toward the thing that freaks you out.
Welcome to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast, where you will learn how to remix your mompreneur life so that you can win at work without losing yourself in the process. Hi, my name is Martine Williams, and I am your host and CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And this podcast is your one-stop shop to creating a burnout-proof life and business and elevating your clarity, confidence, and courage. Friends, it's time to say goodbye to being the yes girl and hello to creating healthy boundaries, healthy mindsets, and healthy habits. Your next breakthrough starts here. This is the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. Let's do this. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. Today we have a turquoise talk guest. Her name is Jennie Ketcham Crooks, and we talk about a topic that I'm pretty sure is happening among all of you as mompreneurs with kiddos and maybe even with your own self. I know it's come up with some of my clients, but what is happening with our digital overuse? That could be your phone, that could be tablets, that could be your computer, but how is it actually impacting our creativity? How is it impacting our relationships with self and with others? And so we talk about in this episode, what is psychological flexibility? How does that guide our behavior in daily lives? You're like, I've never heard that phrase before. Me either. So we'll talk about that. We talk about anxiety, as she is an anxiety specialist. And then we talk about a 30-day challenge to help you to work through maybe some digital habits that you have that you want to make better, that you want to improve upon. And so it's actually going to be a 2-part episode. So we're going to do part 1 today, and then next week we'll do part 2. But let me tell you a little bit about Jennie. So Jennie is the founder of the West Coast Anxiety Clinic, a clinical licensed social worker, and an anxiety and OCD specialist. Prior to starting the West Coast Anxiety Clinic, she was the director of clinical education at Seattle Anxiety Specialist. And before that, the lead medical social worker at the Poly Clinic. She has been involved in research at the University of Washington, a guest lecturer at Harvard University, and appeared on a number of popular television shows from Headline News and The View to Oprah. Such a great conversation. So fun to talk to her and hear her story, hear her journey, how she got into this, and to learn a little bit more about her book that I know you're all going to want to download. So we will put all of the links to things in the show notes, but let's get to it. Welcome back, friends. I am excited for today's Turquoise Talk guest. You know, I love bringing on different experts and just entrepreneurs to share their journey and to share their expertise. So thank you, Jennie, so much for being willing to come on the show.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for having the show and for giving all of the moms like us a place to learn about how to grow our business. So thank you.
Yes. Don't you love podcasting? I mean, I tell all my friends, they're so funny to me. So many of my friends didn't know about podcasting. I'm like, where have you been living?
100%. Yeah. So I started getting into podcasting specifically when I opened my business. I was like, somebody has to talk about this. And, AM radio is sort of dead. And I liked that at the time, but started listening to podcasts and then started doing podcasts. And now I'm having this thought, maybe I ought to start a podcast. And then your validation that I have a good podcast voice.
Yes.
It's just rocking my world. So anyway, the pieces are falling together. I'm here for the podcast. I'm here for it.
Yes. Well, there's just so much to talk about on this topic. And I was sharing with Jennie before we came on, this is just such an important topic for not only just the listeners, but I know these are conversations that are being had anyway. And so, having someone to have honest feedback to talk about these things, the more we're willing to talk about them, the more we can impact them, right? And so again, I just appreciate the work that you're doing. So before we dive into topic specific things, tell us just a little about you and your family or how you became an entrepreneur and doing the work that you're doing today.
You bet. So how I came to do the work that I'm doing today is probably a great place to start because I did not start my adult life as a therapist. I'm an anxiety specialist and an OCD specialist. And I own a group practice. We treat anxiety, OCD, PTSD, pretty much all of anxiety's buddies, right? Where that's what we focus on. But this wasn't my first stop. And opening my own business wasn't my first stop. I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. When I was young, I think I was about 6 years old. My mom says that I came back from the neighborhood and I went out on an adventure all by myself, and I came back with like $30. And my mom was like, "Where did you get this money, Jennifer?" And so she said what I had done
Jennifer, not Jenny.
For sure. You're in trouble with your mom. Jennifer, where did you get all of this money? So I had taken one of my coloring books and gone around and I had sold pages from my coloring books.
Love it.
So this was one of my first forays into the world of business. My first adult career was actually in the adult business. And so before becoming a therapist, I was a porn star and a director and lived in this very sort of salacious and fantastical and also unsustainable world with a very specific shelf life, right? And I was doing porn pre OnlyFans, is that what it's called? I was in this business when there were still porn stars and it wasn't really accessible to everyone. And I thought it'd be a great marketing ploy to go on a Dr. Drew show for sex addiction. I thought, well, yeah, I'm just a workaholic, right? And so it was all sort of framed around this idea of business. And then what happened was I ended up getting sober and they called me Jennie again, which wasn't a name I had used in so long.
Yeah.
And it really shook me and back to that idea of unsustainability, right? And so I pivoted and went back to school and started doing the kind of studying and work that I needed to do in order to help other people change their lives.
Yeah.
And even in doing that, I was still sort of plagued by this like not good enough thing.
Yeah.
And I've started departments. Like I started the social work department at a place called Polyclinic in Seattle. I started a clinical education department in another private practice in Seattle. And I had I've always wanted to own my own group practice and that not good enough, or like you haven't done enough, you haven't proved yourself yet.
Yeah.
That has been something that has plagued me since I was so young, and probably one of the things that landed me in porn.
Right. Yeah.
And then I started really thinking about the work that I do with my clients, and every day I ask my clients to do stuff that really scares them.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, crap, I have to start the business.
You're like, I have to be a product of my product.
Crap. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's time to do the walk. So I started the business. I started the business about 2 years ago, and it's happening. You wake up at 6 a.m. and you're like, it's all going to fail today. All of my clients are going to break up with me. All of my clinicians' clients are going to break up with them. And then you have a little bit of coffee and you see your kids off to school and you're like, okay, maybe we can make it to lunch. Huh?
This is so honest and raw. I love it. My people are like, oh, she's like read my mail, because it's so true. It's the entrepreneur journey. I mean, every day you wake up and there's, all kinds of emotions. And some days you wake up and you're like, does it even matter what I'm doing?
10 minutes ago. That is what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody even care? Like I was interviewing somebody right before you and she was talking about the days you wake up and you hear crickets versus claps. And I'm like, yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Like you're like an audience of one some days you feel like. And so thank you for pushing through that on a daily basis and again, normalizing it, because it is the entrepreneur journey. I say entrepreneurship is the best personal development journey you'll ever go on.
Yeah. Yeah, it is proving to be that. It is the Olympics for me in terms of my professional development and in terms of my uncertainty tolerance. Right?
Yeah.
Like so much of what I teach my clients is uncertainty tolerance. Is tomorrow going to kill you? I don't know. Let's stay alive until then, right? Like is not washing your hands going to be the thing that kills your parents? I don't know. Let's not wash your hands for a day and see what happens, right? Like if that's it, then we're all in big trouble. But in terms of the business, I don't know what's going to happen. And I know that the work that I'm doing matters to me. I can see the work that I'm doing is changing people's lives in a like a measurable way.
Yeah.
And I look at my girls. I have two little girls, 2.5 and 6.5. The halves are important, as you know.
Yes.
And and I get to look at them and talk to them about what it means to do stuff that scares you and that you're really proud of, even if you don't know if it's going to work out. Right. And so I think there's something so magical for me in being both a mom and an entrepreneur. Like it's really the combination.
Yeah.
Because so much of it is about wanting to model the kind of thing I want my daughters to learn about being a strong and independent and courageous woman in this world.
Yeah. And falling down and getting back up, and not getting the result the first time, but having that resilience, that perseverance to keep going. Like that's what they see. I mean, my kids are, when I first started in entrepreneurship, I had one son at the time. He was 1. Now he's 19 and my other son is 16. And I'm like, all they know is entrepreneurship. And they've seen me, ride the wave and own the roller coaster. I tell people all the time, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't own a business, you actually own a roller coaster. So you have ups and downs and upside down moments, all of those things. But I do, at least I hope and pray that they're seeing that resilience, right? And they've seen me, have the hard days, and I'm not afraid to hide the hard days from them because they're going to have them too.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be able to teach that. So tell me about the work that you are currently doing, like this digital overuse and how it really is everywhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely everywhere. And people are feeling it, and it's almost like they know it's there, but they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's so accepted.
Full saturation is what we're calling that, right? Like we are fully saturated with smartphones, with tablets, with tech in our pocket.
Yeah.
So what I started to notice a few years ago that a lot of my clients were using their smartphones as eject buttons from uncomfortable situations, right? Whether it's like I get into an elevator and I don't know where to look or what to say to the guy next to me. And like, we've got like 4 floors to make it up. So I'm just going to look at my phone. Right. Or whether it's sitting in a meeting, waiting for the meeting to start. It's like, oh God, what is her name? Like she literally sits next to me. I have no idea what this person's, or like we're working on something together. So I started to see all of my clients using this like little escape hatch in their daily moments, right? And in terms of the work that I do with anxiety, so much of what I teach my people is to approach, right? Something scares you. Let's check it out.
Yeah.
Let's see if this is the thing that kills you, right? Because if it's not, you're going to learn about your resilience. You're going to learn about what you can tolerate. And if it kills you, it doesn't matter because you're dead. You're dead. Yeah. It's over, right? So like, let's go toward the thing that freaks you out.
Yeah.
So I started seeing that. And then there was one day, Super Bowl Sunday, my oldest was just starting to walk. So she was shuffling along the coffee table, that like that really sweet shuffle. And she hadn't taken her first step yet. We had friends over. It's noisy. It's football. She's sort of like doing her thing. And I have one of these errant thoughts about Snooki from the Jersey Shore, which obviously that comes up in my head. I love Jersey Shore. I love Snooki. I love all of this, right? And so the thought comes up, what is she doing? And what is her net worth? And so I follow that, it's one of these like, there was no, like, why did we follow that? You know what I mean? Like, why did but I held on to that thought and down the rabbit hole I went.
Yeah.
And if you give me a little bit of information about Snooki, I'm definitely going to want to know about the situation. I love situation. I'm so proud of that guy. Like he has made some big life changes. And then I'm like, well, is Ron in jail? Like clearly this man is heading to jail at some point. Right. And so it's like, a little bit leads to a lot. And pretty soon time passes, right? Yeah. And then a lot of time passes. And then I hear clapping and it snaps me back into this moment. And I think, sports ball has happened. The football has gone someplace and someone is happy. And I look up and everyone was looking at Elsie, my oldest, and she had just taken her first step.
Oh.
And I missed it. Love Snooki, but I would give up information about Snooki and her net worth to get that memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing with my older daughter, or with my younger daughter, Sadie, I saw her first step. right? Like I saw it, we filed it away in our file cabinet of mind. The memory has yellowed. I don't really remember it, but I don't really not remember missing. Like I don't remember missing it, you know? And that's the thing with Elsie. And so it led me to understand at this very personal level that this isn't just an avoidance thing, right? Like we're not using tech just to avoid uncomfortable feelings. We're just going on autopilot.
Yeah.
It is this mindless, get sucked in, get put into the time warp, and then time goes by. And that time, those minutes, those moments, it adds up to our whole life.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, like that seems worth looking at. So originally I put together this 8-week like mindfulness-based tech reduction course. And it was framed after John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction. And then I started thinking about access to this information because we are at full saturation. Right?
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to be able to do an 8-week mindfulness course. But literally anybody can buy a book on Amazon and do a 30-day challenge if this is something that they're interested in working on or changing themselves. So I wrote the book.
Okay. I love it. And as I was kind of reading about, and I haven't read specifically into the challenge, but I have been off of social. I did 30 days straight, and then I'm actually not on it. I'm in the DMs a little bit, but I haven't been on socially as a profession posting about my business or anything since before March. And so it's been amazing. And the thing that I've noticed the most is it did allow for more creativity. Like I didn't realize how much my creativity was being like just blocked because of the grind of, showing up on social and posting on social. And am I posting enough? And what am I posting? Versus thinking about creating real opportunities for people to connect with me, through live experiences, whether I'm speaking at an event or just yesterday I did a virtual workshop. Like those are the places and spaces where I really can reach the people with my message. And so I'd heard people doing a detox or a 30-day detox from social, but I'd never done it before. And I'm sure a lot of it was because it was my eject button, or it just became this habit. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what the challenge is in just a few minutes, but I would like for you just to kind of share, what is this concept of psychological flexibility? Like, what is that? When I read that, I was like, I'm not sure what that means. Hey friend, can I give you permission today? Like for real, your own permission slip. Permission to get clear, to cut out the noise, mostly the noise that is going on around in your own mind, in your own head. It's just swirling. And you're asking yourself questions like, why am I stuck? Why am I frustrated? Why am I not making progress on my goals? I want to invite you to a free clarity call with me where we're going to dive in and we're going to identify what are the 3 main issues that are keeping you stuck. Number 2, what are the mindsets around those issues that are actually keeping you from solving for those issues? It's not our skill sets, it's our mindsets that keep us stuck and hold us back. And then number 3, identifying what are your next steps. We all have a next step and we have 100% responsibility for those next steps. Your only next step right now is to go to the show notes and book your free clarity call so that we can work through this. I'm believing in you and I cannot wait to see you on our clarity call.
Yeah. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So psychological flexibility is there's a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. Okay. Right? And it's based on this theory that there are certain behavioral processes that become rigid when we experience psychopathology, right? And those behavioral processes are like there's 6 different processes that become rigid. So paying attention. Where are you paying attention? Are you rigidly stuck to the future or past, or are you right here in the moment, right? And if you're rigidly stuck to the future or past, you're more likely to experience anxiety or depression, right? But if you can attend flexibly to all of these places, then you're going to have a lot better psychological health. Or another one is experiential acceptance versus experiential avoidance, right? Back to that elevator example. Are you so uncomfortable with the way that your body feels and unwilling to experience it that you do things to avoid? And do you do that rigidly, right? Because if you do, then you're going to miss moments that really allow you to test whatever your theory is about being in that moment, right? And one theory might be, I can't tolerate this discomfort. Well, if you're not present with that discomfort, you don't actually get to learn if you can tolerate it. Right. Or this person's going to judge me. So I look away. I attend somewhere else. I avoid their judgment. You never get an opportunity to notice if they're actually judging you, right? Because you're looking down. And so there are all of these different processes that become inflexible and rigid. And then we have psychopathology, like mental unwellness, as a direct result of that. And so psychological flexibility is about learning how to move flexibly through the world and your behavior and with intention.
Yeah. Yeah. And being willing to feel what you need to feel versus
feel whatever's there.
Yeah. Versus avoiding, or, a lot of the clients that I work with, they don't want to feel that emotion. They don't want to feel the disappointment. They don't want to feel the fear. Obviously, we don't want to feel those things. But like you said, allowing yourself to kind of lean into it, you learn from it. To shaming it. Like, I shouldn't be feeling this. There's a lot of shoulds with the moms that I work with. Like, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I should just be able to pick myself up by my bootstraps and deal with this. Like, I hear that a lot. And I'm like, where is the should coming from? Shoulding is shaming, in my opinion. That's how I see it. If you're shoulding yourself, you're shaming yourself, and that doesn't help you to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's very compelling content, right? Like that if we could just pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, then off we'd go, right?
Right.
And it does create this sense of control. Like, well, it's on me, like if I just wasn't so pathetic and disappointed in myself, if I was just a better business owner or better this, right? Like, then everything would change. I should be better. Right. And so we get sort of stuck to that thought, and we hold on to that thought instead of really listening and looking at, like, okay, well, I can experience this disappointment, and it's actually here to teach me something about what I care about and what I did that might not have worked. Right. Like, I early on in business learned very quickly about something that doesn't work, right? Like, if I'm doing a rapid fire hire, that's not a good strategy for me, for my business, right? I'm going to end up with people that just aren't a great fit. And so I learned that the hard way. Yeah. And that disappointment, God, it's saturated. It's fully in me. And so feeling that and allowing yourself to feel it offers the opportunity to learn something from it. And so I think it's great that you really point out this idea of, like, shoulds or shames. And you just don't have to do that, right? You can see that thought. It's compelling. It's a cultural narrative that is everywhere. Yeah. And you also don't have to play by that rule.
Right. You don't have to believe everything your brain's offering up to you.
Yeah. Brenda. I've named her Brenda. I don't know.
I was actually reading a book, and they were talking about naming your brain. I don't remember what book it was now, but
it might have been mine.
Could have been. Could have been. I'm like, I don't know. I have to come up with a name for mine. But
yeah.
So we know that we are using our devices as this eject button. I would say the majority, at least the clients and the people that are listening, I know that's their thing. That's the way they numb out. That's the way they cope. That's the way they escape. That's their self-care for a lot of them. And I'm like, girl, we need to talk. If that's your idea of self-care, like we need to talk. But the fact is, it's true. So how do we balance that? Like, how do we allow ourselves to have some of that digital time, but also not let it take over where we're just in this mindless, like, what's the balance or the harmony there?
It's really tough, right? Because the machine is designed to make you do more of it. Right. And so functionally, we have to be so present and so glued into our values and our intention when we're using it that our brain doesn't make those cognitive errors. Because that's all it is, right? Like, going onto autopilot, it's just an evolutionarily super important thing that happens that brains do. It's like, nope, it's time to go on autopilot. We're going to, kick down all of the energy that we are expending, and we're just going to be on autopilot for a while. That is not helpful when we're on our phones, right? And so clarifying your value and your intention before you get into your phone can be a really helpful thing. I'm using this time to relax. Well, that's a curious idea, right? And really being open to exploring, like, if I'm using this as my self-care, then one, do I have other options for self-care? right? Is the fact that I need to numb out actually kind of important to attend to, right? Like if you're so distressed that you're like, I just need to numb out for a little bit, it's like, whoa, well, how about we actually keep this turned on and you feel as distressed as you feel, because that's when you're likely to make a change in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So
right?
true.
Like when I went to sex rehab with Dr. Drew, if they had let me keep drinking Jack Daniels in rehab, guaranteed I'd still be in porn, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like all of my feelings turned on and I was like, whoa,
yeah.
Where am I? Like what has been happening in my life?
Yeah.
And it opened the door to change, right? So really the first step to managing your digital overuse is coming off autopilot. Like starting to attend to what's happening right now. Is it distress? Is it a longing for connection? I know a lot of my people who show up are like, oh, that's how I connect with people. That's how I plug in. That's how I know what's going on in their lives. It's like, well, is it enough? Do you feel satisfied and nourished after you've perused Instagram and looked at other people's lives? Like, does that make you feel whole inside? Because if you keep going back to it and be like, oh, I need more, I need to know what now, like that to me says you're not full.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's like potato chips. They're so tasty. I love potato chips.
You can never eat just one. I forget which brand is. That's their motto, right? Is it Lay's?
Totally. Right. And you are not getting the nourishment that you actually need from this tasty little treat. And so I'm turning toward that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the questions that you're asking, because I do think that we either just grind through or over explain versus just slowing down and actually asking the question of ourselves. Like, what do you need in this moment? Is it really this thing? Whether it's, alcohol or the device or whatever, like just being really aware of what is the actual need you're trying to fill right now, or numb out of, or, cope with. And is this really the best option for you in this moment?
Yeah. And what happens if you don't do it? Right? Like if you don't numb out, do you then become so distressed about going to work that you don't go to work?
Right.
Babe, maybe it's time to stop going to that job.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like what if we listen to that? Or if you are so stressed and even if it's a bath, oh, I have to take my bath every single night, right? If there is that rigidity in behavior and you're using that thing to avoid the way that you feel, I don't know, maybe we ought to reconsider, because that feeling showing up, it's telling you something important about something you care about that's being lost. And so if we can turn to that and listen to that, our life is likely going to get a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think that we are not taught these things. Also, there's just not a lot of awareness around it, especially as the high achieving, high ambitious women that I'm around. And when I start talking about some of these things with them as their coach, they're like, it's not tactical, right? It's not some tangible they can put their hands on and go do. It just feels fluffy and not important, when really, in my mind, as I see it, it is one of the most important things for you to learn about yourself, is your emotions and how to manage your emotions and regulate your emotions and your energy. So I don't know if you see that, but it's just this need for tactical things to do. It's always something tactical, and really reframing your brain around this actually is tactical. It actually is really important to stop and pause and have these questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I see with a lot of the high achieving women that I work with a lot of high achieving, anxious women who are in tech. Right. And so they come in and it's like, okay, well, I feel so anxious and I need to solve this problem. I need to solve, I shouldn't feel this way. So, and then brain just goes into that analytical problem solving, and they're engineers, right? So
right, yeah.
Problem solving, extraordinary humans.
Yeah.
And maybe this isn't a problem to be solved, right? Maybe this private psychological event that's happening inside of you is something more to be witnessed, like a sunset, right? What happens if we don't solve that emotional problem and you just sort of be where you are?
Yeah.
Right. It's especially tough with women, I think, because we are coming out of that age where the expectation is still that we are managing a household.
Yeah.
And still that we can work full time and do that and look fabulous. And I don't know, shower occasionally. Like I would love to get 3 showers in a week. That'd be so amazing for me. Like, and then also pick up the kids and then also have time for Pilates and then also have time to make an extraordinary, like 3-course meal for dinner. Like the expectations are so high on us.
Yeah.
And men and people of different genders, like everyone has their own set of expectations. But being in the body that I'm in and living the life that I live with the social expectations that are put on me, it doesn't necessarily help in terms of like managing that distress. And so, of course, I think I should be able to do it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know like there's a big discussion, or been some big discussions around parenting and devices and all of that. So I would love to know what you're seeing with this, what the impacts you're seeing maybe on kids, and maybe heightened anxiety or heightened, mental illness. Like, what are you seeing with that? And what are some suggestions that you have for some parents that are listening who, I find the conversation is people are on one side of the fence or the other. They're like, just give it to them. And others are like, no, not until they're like, 16, 17, 18. So I don't know. I just would love to know what you're seeing right now with that.
Yeah, it's hard out there for a parent, right? Like, and I think even the idea that like it's either or, either we give it to them or we hold off until they're like 16 or whatever. That divide is so difficult, right? That just sets us up for this black or white thinking around like they either have full unfettered access or they don't. We are now seeing the adults who have had phones through their whole life. Right. I'm not one of those adults. I remember a time like when I mentioned earlier, when I was like 6, just like leaving and selling things in the neighborhood. First of all, it was a different neighborhood. I wasn't living in a city. Right. But like, it's a really hard world for a kid who has grown up with this technology throughout their entire life, who has these social messages that if they don't have these things, then they'll be missing out on something or they won't be included on a thing. And then us as parents, we're in this position where it's like, well, do we want to tell our kid that they can't have the thing that they are convinced they need in order to fit in?
Right.
So that's distressing, right? So back to that place where we have to be able to like allow ourselves to feel distress and still choose to act aligned with our values.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want our girls, and I'm part of like a mommy group where we have this like parenting pact, and we've all committed to not give our girls smartphones until they're 16.
Yeah. I did the same thing.
Yeah, we'll give them phones, like the dumb phones, fine.
Right.
Like you need to call me, fine. There's no reason for you to have this technology before that. I don't want you on Instagram. I don't want you wearing makeup certainly before high school. Like I'm not particularly into that. I suspect that she will sneak out. They will both sneak out and put it on and take it off.
I did.
I did too. I had a full different set of clothes, right? And like I made them, so there's a good chance that like it's going to be worse, right? But I will still adhere to that boundary and try to protect them, right? And so there's that one piece where it's like I have to tolerate the distress of disappointing my kids and telling them no. I like to say yes. But this is a protect. This isn't a punish decision. This is a protect decision. I don't just drop them off in White Center, which is this like questionable neighborhood where we live, right? Like, I don't just drop them off in White Center to wander around, and I'm certainly not going to just let them wander around the internet.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one piece. The other piece is to recognize that as parents, they are watching every move we make, right? And because their brains haven't fully developed yet, they're coming up with some really curious explanations for why we're doing what we're doing, right? And so your kid walks into a room and they see you're on the phone and you say something to them, but you don't really look up and like acknowledge them, right? They're going to interpret that in a very specific way. And that interpretation will largely be based on how they feel, right? Like, do they feel left out in that moment? Do they feel unseen in that moment? They will arrive at a conclusion that involves that, right? Did they have a hard day at school? that will get integrated into this and then made sense, right? And we all do this sort of meaning making from behavior, but they don't know that you're sitting there reading Wall Street Journal or that you're like doing an email from work, right? And so as parents, we need to get into the practice of being intentional about what we're choosing, right? So my 2.5-year-old has already identified that my phone is a very important thing to me, which I'm like, oh, crap. So she will, I'll be sitting in the living room and we're playing and she'll be like, oh, mommy, your phone. And she'll run into the other room and grab it. And I've been very intentional about like, nope, that's going to be in there. I don't need to be tempted. And she's like, mommy, here, your phone. I'm like, okay. From that young age, she is learning. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really hurts, so it's like, no, mommy's going to choose to be here with you right now. Like we can put this back. I don't need this right now. And so being really intentional with our kids about what we're choosing, which means if you're going to choose to be on your phone, tell them that I need to write this email really quickly, and then I'm going to put it down so I can be with you. Or you can say, I was writing an email. It's not important that I finish it right now. I'd rather choose to be with you. Right. But being very explicit about what your choices are. And that's not only going to teach your kid about what you're doing with your phone and model how to make active choices, but it's also going to help you come off autopilot and make more active choices because you're going to be in there in that moment at that choice point where you're saying, yeah, I am choosing to finish this email before I play with my kid because things are on fire and I'm going to have a hard time attending to that. Or recognizing maybe I don't actually have to finish this email before I choose to play with my kid. Maybe things aren't on fire. Maybe I just feel afraid and that sense of urgency is here and I'm responding to that, but it's not actually an urgent matter. Maybe I just have a really sensitive fire alarm. And so which is to say, I don't have a clear, like, this is the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it is helpful to really look at your values. Like, what is important to you as a parent, right? Do you want to model behavior or do you want to be the kind of parent who just says something and then does whatever they want?
Want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I stole my mom's cigarettes. She hid them in the closet because we weren't supposed to smoke cigarettes, but I stole hers and smoked in private for years. And then I started smoking like secretly with her, hiding it from her husband and from the other, you know what I mean? So like,
right. Yeah.
I don't know. I want to be the kind of parent who teaches through example.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the question that each person listening gets to answer for themselves. Right.
Yeah.
That's why, it's not about being a hard fast. This is a right and a wrong. Yes, there's science and there's data and there's things for you to learn so that you could gather the information to make the best decision for you and your family and to honor that without judging others if theirs is completely different from you. One of the questions I like to ask of myself really as a parent, but also just in life in general, like, how do I want to show up and how do I want to be remembered? When I'm in connection with people, when I'm in with my kids or when I'm on a podcast or anywhere, it's like, okay, how do I want to show up here? And how do I want to be remembered when I leave them? And that kind of is my filter, or my gauge that brings me back to how do I want to show up in that. But that could be very different for you, Jennie, and very different for some of the other mompreneurs that are listening. So it's just, to me, I feel like there's just this slowdown that is needed for these questions to be asked and to gain some real awareness around what are we trying to create as moms? What are we trying to create as entrepreneurs? What kind of relationship do we want to have with our children? What do we want to teach them? What do we want to role model for them? Versus just seeing whatever we see on social media or other people doing and just take that on as our own.
Yeah. And I think your point about like slowing down is so important, right? Because if we're just going fast, if we're on autopilot, if we're just reacting to the content that we see and assuming that's how we should be living, then it's going to lack the intention, right? It's throwing seeds out into the garden and hoping something grows. But I want to be an intentional gardener in my life.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important in terms of digital use is to be flexible with it, right? Like I think it's a little bit of a trap to say, well, I don't want my kids to be exposed to this at all. That's possible, right? Like it's really hard in the city and the culture that we are a part of.
Yeah. Because their friends have phones. And so even if they don't have social media or have a phone, they're going to be exposed to it from somebody.
Their school gives them tablets. They are testing on tablets.
True. Yeah.
Right. The school's like, this is it. What is the Scantron? Right. Like why would we use a Scantron when
that's hilarious.
It's like, so this is here to stay. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, if we are going to use the phone, being intentional about how we use it and using it together, using it as a way to connect instead of as a way to disconnect. And I think that that's a really important point, right? Like, for example, we go out to dinner and like I mentioned, I have a 2.5-year-old and a 6.5-year-old. The 6.5-year-old is much better now, but the 2.5-year-old is a wild card at dinner, right? Yeah. Like we can get maybe 3/4 of the way through the main course before she's done. She wants to talk to the chef. She wants to go to the bathroom. She wants to stand in her chair. She wants to throw the quesadilla to the kid that's sitting next to her, like 2 tables away. She's a delight. We love her. She's a menace. Yeah. And we need some like management strategies so we can finish our meal. Because we paid for this meal. We don't go out a lot. Like it's a special thing for us to get to go out. And so we bring a magic bag. Like, okay, here's your coloring thing. You do that first. Okay, here's this. You do that second, right? And once we've exhausted the magic bag, which happens pretty quick because she's 2.5 and she's done with this, done with this, done with this. Okay, let's set you both up with a movie that you can watch together, right? So it's not like this like exclusive, immersive thing where they're doing it separately, right? Like first they have to agree on a movie that they're going to watch together. It's this shared collaborative moment for them where they're figuring it out together. Or maybe you do like an iPad coloring thing, right? And so it comes out as a tool to create a little bridge of time for mom and dad, right? It is a terrible act of kindness for us, right? Like I want my churros. I just want to eat the churros. Like that's all I want.
Yes.
And we use it in a way where we try to get them to come together and work together in some way and arrive at some place together. And then they have the experience together, which is very different than each of them having their own like headphones on, totally like locked in, doing their own separate thing. It's a very separate experience. And so there's a lot of flexibility in how you can use technology. And again, back to what you're saying, like we need to slow down, ask ourselves the question about like, how do I want to be remembered in this moment? What kind of parent do I want to be? Right? Like what kind of parent do I want to move toward? And how do I want my kids to learn from me? And then actively choosing that and moving toward it.
Yeah. I love that you said actively choosing because it does take intentional thoughts and it takes intentional action. Success is not an accident. So, you have to be intentional about these things or you're just going to ride the current and the wave of what everyone else is doing. So it does take you just being intentional and taking that, making the decision. I think sometimes the indecision comes in, the land of indecision comes because we don't know what to choose. And everyone has their own opinions and everyone has their ideas and their tips and their tricks that they're using. And so we get overwhelmed by all the choices and we just don't decide.
I find that happens most when we're trying to make the right choice.
Oh, that's me. Yes, 100%.
It's so elusive, isn't it?
It is. It's awful.
If I just never had to make another mistake again, then nobody would ever be distressed. My business would do so well and off we'd go. I just got to figure out what the right thing is. Oh,
it's so true. I mean, I could teach it all day long, but I will tell you, I tell it to my clients too. I'm like, it is definitely one of the traps that I fall into.
Yeah.
That I want to get it. And it's just, I want it to be done well.
Yeah.
But I want it to be done well and the T's crossed and the I's dotted and all of that. But it's instead of making a decision and doing the work to make it right, we stew over just trying to make the right decision. And you don't know until you go. You don't know until you take that first step, whether it's the right decision or not.
Yeah.
And like you said, being willing to feel it. If it's not the right decision, you'd be like, well, that wasn't it. What's next?
It shows up in the most insidious and silly of ways. Like right now I have 3 different Holiday Williams-Sonoma hand soaps in my cart because I'm trying to make the right decision. And it's been there for like 3 days. 3 days. Like, it's like, Jennie, we are out of soap, like there's no soap in this house. Like need this. We needed the soap like 2 weeks ago because it still has to ship. Like literally none of this matters. Just get the winter or get the berry. It doesn't matter. Buy the soap or go to the store and buy something else. Right. Like, it's time for action.
Right. Well, that's a wrap, friends. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope it met you right where you are and gave you some encouragement for your day. Could you do me the biggest favor and leave me a rating and review? Seriously, it's the best way for you to support the show. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. And until next time, I am believing in you always.